Let me make sure I'm saying this right. Was your podcast called The Dharmalers?
Darmalars? Yeah.
Dharmalars. Okay. Since 2006, my guest today has been producing podcasts for the Casino Skunk Production. Woo! These include shows like The Dharmalers, The Kaiju
Darmalars?
Podcast, Live Action Star Wars, Cue the Music, Invincipod, and my favorite, Lanterns Live, which, if you're watching this right now, you should definitely be subscribed to Lanterns Live. He's also the producer of the documentary Getting Lost, one of my favorite television shows of all time. Lost, celebrating his 20th anniversary. He is the man, the myth, the legend, my favorite Green Lantern fan in all of the galaxy. Ralph, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. How are you? That's a lot of stuff.
The amount of stuff you have produced is massive, sir. Kudos to you. You have done a fantastic job. Your career so far, I have been following your career with great interest so far, and I will continue because Ralph is not only a fantastic guy, but an amazing podcaster. Like I said, I listed all of his podcasts that he's currently doing right now: Live Action Star Wars, Invincipod, Lanterns Live, Cue the Music. Ralph, everything you're doing is knocking it out of the park, sir. I just
Thanks.
commend you because you're doing such a great job. But the reason why you're here, Ralph, is because you are the greatest lantern in all the galaxy. I gotta
don't know
say,
about that.
no one has ever shown a greater affection or affinity for Green Lantern than you in my life. So I wanted to have you on today on this Comic Cooks because I want to get your origin story. What was your first ever Green Lantern memory?
So when I was a kid, and this goes back to the early 80s,
Whoa.
I watched a cartoon called Super Friends. And Super Friends had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. All the normal comic book heroes that we all know and love and have loved for like 80 plus years. And then there was Green Lantern. And Green Lantern I wasn't as familiar with at that time. So I kind of like sort of gravitated towards Green Lantern. Hal Jordan, he had a space ring and he can do whatever he wanted with it. And it was one of those things where I'm like, yeah, that guy's pretty cool. And he was my favorite, but it was like no big deal. It was just a cartoon I watched. There was like dozens of cartoons. I liked Mask and Transformers, G.I. Joe, everything under the sun in the 80s I watched. So I really didn't, I wasn't like, I was like, man, Green Lantern's like my favorite thing of all time. He was one of many favorite things. And then I was playing Trivial Pursuit with my family, another very 80s thing that you would do. And we had it was a version, it was like a family version where all the questions weren't just like crazy hard. And there was a question in there, and I remember it mentioning Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, and I believe John Stewart are part of this superhero team or whatever the question was. And to my parents' shock, I answered Green Lantern, and they looked at the card and was like, holy crap, how did you know that? And I think it's obviously because of Super Friends. And I feel like the Guy Gardner of it all, that G alliteration kind of helped me, pushed me towards my answer. And they were just like shocked. And from then I was like, oh, I'm like a Green Lantern expert, which I would never, ever claim that today. But it was one of those things where I was just like, I had never really done anything at the time where you like, your parents are taken aback by something you did. They were like completely impressed because my grades in school growing up were awful. I would spend my whole childhood and even my adult life during meetings, during school, doodling. I can't sit still, and I would doodle like comic book guys and Indiana Jones and stuff like that. So when they were so impressed that I knew the answer to that was Green Lantern, I was like, okay, I felt almost like this has never happened to me before. Like I've never felt so smart on a question that nobody at the table knew. So around like 1990, I was 13. I was born in 77. So in 1990, like Batman had come out, and I just started reading like anytime you would go to like the liquor store or like a drugstore, they would have the spinner rack, and I'd grab like Batman was everywhere in 89. And then in 90, there was an issue of Green Lantern #1.
Ooh.
Green Lantern was starting its volume 3, and I picked it up. I'm like, ooh, Green Lantern #1, like that's an easy way to get a kid to read a comic is to have a first issue. And I read that book, and I liked it so much, and my mom liked that I was reading, because that's something I still to this day do not like doing, is reading. It makes me sleepy, and so I tend to listen to audiobooks if I do read. So anyway, I told my mom I like it a lot, and in the back there's like an address or something you can write to get a subscription to comics. And so I got, I think, like 2 years worth of Green Lantern comics. I think I made it to like issue 27 or something, and they would come every month in the mail inside a little plastic bag. Sometimes they throw a little trading card in there or something. And every month I would get a new issue of Green Lantern. And that was the run leading up to like Kyle Rayner and Emerald Dawn and Emerald Twilight and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So like really from about the time I was like 12 or 13. So we're talking like 35 years ago. Well, now like I just turned 48. Like it's been a long time of reading Green Lantern, and I kind of paused a little bit in my high school years. So I missed a little of stuff on the, you know, a little later in that run. But then when I heard about Kyle Rayner, I was like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on with this. And I read like Kyle Rayner, and I'm like, here's this dude that likes to draw little comic book guys just like I do. And so I really like gravitated towards that guy. I'm like, oh, this guy is rad. Because again, he was new. It was a clean slate. It wasn't like, you know, 30 years of Hal Jordan that I just didn't like connect to. Like I love Hal Jordan, but you know, 13-year-olds like, I don't want to be a test pilot. I don't know anything about being a test pilot. I don't really like, this is like an old guy. Hal Jordan is a guy and has been a guy since I was a little kid. Here's Kyle Rayner coming in, and he's roughly the same age as me. He's probably a couple years older than me, and his black hair, which I used to have, and I used to have hair. And it was one of those things where I was like, this dude's rad. And so I read him for a while and then dropped off, got married. And, you know, you kind of like fall out of books after a certain amount of time. And one day my wife and I went to a comic book shop, and they had Green Lantern Rebirth #1 by Geoff Johns. And I'm like, oh, #1. I'm like, Hal Jordan's back. Like Hal Jordan's been gone since Kyle Rayner showed up. Like he showed up every once in a while. So I was like, okay, let me try this again. And that was it. Geoff Johns' run made me like continue to read to this day Green Lantern books. So there's little gaps in there with like, you know, Comixology and like Apple Books and stuff. Like I've been filling those gaps. I think I'm on Green Lantern 115 right now.
Oh, nice.
And I started back at 1. The ones that I started with, and I've been going through. I've also got all the archive editions of the Silver Age Green Lantern books.
Oh, nice.
And so I've read like all the Silver Age books. Oh, nice. I've read like the Denny O'Neil Hard Traveling Heroes run with Neil Adams. And I started reading like Green Lantern Corps in the 80s. So I'm like filling like all those like 3 different gaps in my run. But I just love the character. Like it's just one of those things where I'm just like I love Green Lantern. And then what was it, around 2008 when Geoff Johns really started ramping up to Blackest Night. I was reading monthly to Sinestro Corps War, and then it was ramping up to Black and White, and everybody out of nowhere was a Green Lantern fan. Like all DC fans were now Green Lantern fans because of all the crossovers with Blackest Night. And it was like the top of the mountain. Like this is the greatest thing ever. So just like a massive, like that era, I was working at a shop called Beach Ball Comics. It's not there anymore. Geoff Johns came to our shop the day that Blackest Night launched, and we had a signing, and I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. This is the greatest day. He took us to dinner after the store closed. While we were closing up the shop and like counting the money and putting it in the safe and doing all that stuff, he was just sitting there waiting for us to be done so we can go to dinner. And while he sat there, he grabbed all the Sharpies, went into the store, and just started signing all of his books that were on the shelves, including all the variants of the Blackest Night, anything in there Geoff Johns related. He went in and signed while we closed up the shop. And then we had dinner with him. I suggested, he said, what are you guys reading? And I told him, I'm reading Invincible. You got to read Invincible. And I said, you got to get to issue 7. He's like, I'm like, no, you're gonna want to get to issue 7. I don't know if he ever took me up on that, but just like sitting there having dinner with Geoff Johns was in 2010 was just like amazing. And so like I'm not an expert at all, but I do constantly like read Green Lantern. If you can see my shelves now, I have like hardcover Green Lanterns, I have PVC figures and some 1/6 scale figures. I have Hero Clicks, I have Mini Mates, I have Superpowers, I have one Funko thing, which is a Jessica Cruz little bombshell.
Ooh, nice
figure. I don't really collect the Funkos anymore, but little Jessica Cruz. I have a copy of Green Lantern 51, the first appearance of Kyle in his black and white suit. That's like a graded 9.6 that my brother-in-law gave me. Nice. I have a Blackest Night. I have a free comic book day 0-issue Blackest Night signed by Geoff Johns. That's graded a 9.6. I got that on that day, and I sealed it in a bag, and it never saw the light of day. So it's like in good shape. So, dude, like I have all the rings. I have this ring that they gave away, and Kyle first came on the scene. I love it. I have a land. This is actually cool. A friend of mine, Jorge Garcia, who was on Lost, got this at Comic-Con. It's the movie ring, and they sent these out to like Seth Green and Kevin Smith for the release of the 2011 Green Lantern movie. And my friend Jorge was able to get my hands on one. Nice. And so I was like, dude. Like I tried to look these up online just to see who else has them, and I can't find them anywhere. Has a Green Lantern logo.
That's got to be worth
it. It lights up, but the battery's kind of dead. But I've gone in and I've changed the battery out. But so yeah, I'm a massive fan, and it took me a while, but I was sitting on my couch, and the new show Lanterns is coming out, and I'm like, man, I'm so excited about that show. And I have a StreamYard account, and I'm paying to do live shows. And I'm like, they're really easy to do because when you do them live, once you're done recording, they're just on YouTube. So I'm like, let me check something. And I go on my phone and I type in lanternslive.com. That page does not exist. I go to all the social media sites and type in @lanternslive, and like those don't exist. One existed on X, but I was like, I'm kind of falling out of love with X. So I'm just like, okay, I'm like, am I doing this? I'm literally sitting on the couch like a Friday night, just watching TV, and my brain is just being my brain thinking about Green Lantern. And I was just like, okay, go to GoDaddy, purchase lanternslive.com, go to Instagram @lanternslive, go to Blue Sky @lanternslive, got it across the board. And by Monday I was like, well, I guess I have a new podcast, which I'm excited about, man. There's two things that I never did that I'm huge, massive fans of that I never podcasted about: James Bond and Green Lantern.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to do a James Bond one. I just want my James Bond fandom to be my James Bond fandom. But with Lanterns, with the excitement of like Nathan Fillion being cast and the Lantern show, finally, like Lanterns was teased like years ago. And I was just like, Jeremy Adams' new book is just like, he's knocking it out of the park. And I'm like, man, this is a really good time to be a Lantern fan. I'll just do a live show whenever I feel like it.
Dang, I'm so glad that you did, because you probably didn't know this, but you have reignited my spark for Green Lantern, because I had kind of a similar story to you. The only exception was I never really got into Kyle, but everything else was very similar for me. My very first introduction to Green Lantern was the Superpowers Green Lantern that came with a little comic book. And I remember that figure so well, and his fist with the ring on it. And then he came with the little lantern. That was my first exposure to Green Lantern. And then for the longest time, Hal was my favorite. And then when the Geoff Johns run happened, and that was, like you said, that was such a great time to just be a comics fan, but a Lantern fan as well. And he made Hal Jordan and Green Lantern cool. He didn't quite, I think, accomplish the same thing with Barry Allen like he wanted to. I think he was much more successful.
You know what he did though with Aquaman? His Aquaman.
Oh yes, I love the new 52 Aquaman. Yep,
Aquaman was a massive joke at the time.
Yes, yep.
And his new 52 Aquaman is such a good run, and probably like helped lend itself to like 2 Aquaman films.
Yeah. Which that was like, I always would tell people like, this is Aquaman right here. I would hand them the new 52, and then also on Brave and the Bold. the Batman animated series, the John DiMaggio version. Outrageous. That version. Actually, my wife, that's her favorite. Like, she loves Aquaman, just that version of it. But I had a similar, like I said, the same thing where there was a period where I was kind of falling out of comics, and I got married and I had a son, and then got back into it. But really, Lanterns Live, I got to tell you, Lanterns Live got me reading the current Jeremy Adams book again, and
it's good.
The Lantern Show. Yeah, it is fantastic. And I fell behind on it. I actually appeared on Lanterns Live and we talked about an issue, but that got me reading again. You got me watching the animated show, which at the time when it came out, I was like, I don't like the stiffness of how they move.
It's the Bruce Timm style in 3D, which it looked like kind of like Incredibles, but not as good as Incredibles. But it's a TV show in 2011. But man, if you, I've brought this up so many times on my show, it's like, if you can get just past the animation, the storytelling and voice acting is so good that you completely forget about the limitations.
Yes, actually very similar to like Star Trek, the original series, when people are like, oh, the CG or the special effects are not holding up. And I'm like, you can get past that. The storytelling, like those, that is so great. And that's what the Lantern Show feels like to me, is like a good Star Trek show. So I'm like halfway through it right now. And I'm like, now I don't want it to end. When I was at the start, I was like, I didn't want to start it. Now I don't want it to end.
You're going to get bummed. You're going to get bummed. Cause it's like I remember when that last episode aired, and it was just like so heartbreaking, because you just knew where they like dumped a bunch and at once, and you're just like, it's not coming back. And it's like,
well, at least My Adventures with Green Lantern is coming up now, and you held up Jessica Cruz. I love My Adventures with Superman, so I'm really,
I need to watch it. I'm not the biggest Superman fan. I like Superman, but the fact that they're doing a Green Lantern version is going to make me go and watch those. Was it 2 or 3 seasons?
2 so far. Yeah. And they're coming back for a 3rd one. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll watch it, just because there may be some sort of crossover.
That is good. I'm going to want to do a My Adventures universe and have My Adventures with Aquaman and My Adventures with Martian Manhunter, whatever. Like, if they can continue that, that would be fantastic. But I'm very much looking forward to that Green Lantern.
It's kind of crazy that the second one is Green Lantern.
100%. Right? And Jessica, maybe you can tell me, how is she been received from the fans' point of view? Like, is she a popular Lantern?
Yeah, I think so. What's great about Jessica is, well, first of all, it is Green Lantern that's a woman from Earth.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of Green Lantern that are women. Aricia, Jade, Kat Matui. There's a ton. But we haven't had one from Earth, and it's a Geoff Johns creation. At the end of Geoff Johns' run, he had already created Simon Baz, but then in the last issue mentions Jessica Cruz. It kind of shows like the Lanterns in the, like, where they end up in the future. It's like a little like epilogue. So other creators can fill those gaps up until however long they need to do that. So Jessica Cruz was just mentioned, and there may have been a drawing of her. Her story is pretty complex. Well, it's not complex, but it's a heartbreaking story where she witnesses her friends getting murdered. So she is in the woods camping with her friends. Her 3 friends, I think, get murdered, and she's able to escape. And she then spends 3 years without leaving her house. So she's got this anxiety and stuff. And so I think she's a really sympathetic character. So I feel like the comic readers who read her story are immediately like on her side, because she's really like overcoming fear, like from a really dark place. There was a follow-up to the Justice League Unlimited series, or the Justice League animated series, called Justice League of America versus the Fatal Five. And in that story, it has everybody from the original Justice League series, all the same artwork and actors. And the story centers around 2 characters, and Jessica being one of them. And so it's nice to see that Warner Brothers Animation have been putting her out there. The superhero, is it Superhero Girls?
Yes.
Yeah. So in that, the Green Lantern is Jessica Cruz as well. And so she's really like, you get Jessica Cruz dolls, like actual like Barbie style dolls of like Jessica Cruz and stuff. So it's really, really good for anybody who is a little girl growing up and wants to become a fan of comics, it's great to see that DC has so many women characters, and Jessica Cruz has just kind of been embraced, I feel like, in the comics and in other media. So the fact that they're centering the show around her, I think makes a lot of sense, because she's the youngest Lantern, she's the newest Lantern. Well, there's been some since, like the Teen Lantern and whatever. Carrie. But Jessica Cruz, like someone who you can really has, like, in her short amount of time in the books, has a pretty good size following. So she's like the perfect candidate for this. My big question mark is, who is the Green Lantern she's having the adventure with? In the comic books, she spends a lot of time with Simon as a partner. They're definitely come up around the same time. They're partners. And if you read Sam Humphrey's run on Green Lanterns, it's a terrific run. I think I recommended it to you.
Yes.
But when it comes, so they're like equals. They're like almost partners coming up at the same time. So when it comes to like another Green Lantern to be on an adventure with, it's happened in the book since she was pretty much introduced to like Oa and the Green Lantern Corps through Kyle Rayner. Now we have a live action John Stewart, Hal Jordan, and Guy Gardner now, that I'm hoping the series chooses Kyle Rayner as the main Lantern that she's having the adventures with.
Now that would be interesting, yes. And he appeared in, because John Stewart was the Justice League animated Lantern.
Yeah.
Did Kyle Rayner appeared in Justice League Unlimited, I think?
Kyle Rayner showed up. I know he was in Young Justice. He showed up in an episode of Superman, the animated series. And
okay, maybe that's where it was. Yes.
He didn't have the sort of black and white suit. His backstory was a little bit different, but I really liked his backstory, because his backstory, he worked as a graphic artist.
Yes.
For the Daily Planet. And I thought that was really neat, especially since this was a story revolving around him as a Green Lantern and Superman. So it really, that was a lot of fun. But I think I would like to see, it's so hard because this show needs to appeal to a wider audience. And like when you do My Adventure with Superman, everybody knows Superman, you're good to go. So if you do My Adventure with Green Lantern and you got Jessica, who you don't really know, and then Kyle, who people don't know, I don't know if they're going to go that route. I'm assuming that Hal will be in there somewhere and John will be in there somewhere, but I don't know how this is going to play out. If they really want to, I would like it and appreciate it if they use Kyle, because Kyle's my favorite. But I see them probably doing Hal, and if they do Hal, they gotta have Josh Keaton come back.
Ooh.
Because he's so good. And he's did a couple episodes of like the newer Young Justice, where like, I don't know if you heard about that. Young Justice, like Razor showed up, and it was the same voice actor, and Kilowoggs showed up in Young Justice, and it's Kevin Michael Richardson. I need to get more into Young Justice. I literally only watched the ones where people were like, Ralph, did you see Green Lanterns in Young Justice? And I go and I watched that episode.
I watched the first season of Young Justice, and I was like loving it, but I just got busy and I never got back to it. I was literally driving home today. I was like, I need to watch Young Justice some more.
Yeah, I should probably watch it.
Yes. I want to ask you real quick, what are your thoughts on Alan Scott? Do you have...
So here's the problem with Alan Scott. On like Comixology, there's only like 2 Alan Scott issues available on there. Like you can't go back. They don't have the archive books. Like they may have archive books of Golden Age Green Lantern, but like I don't have a lot of shelf space. But I think digitally it's really hard to get into Alan Scott. I like the character. Alan Scott gets name dropped in a Green Lantern episode you probably haven't seen yet. I like the character. I have an Alan Scott figure up there. I have this Superpowers one. This Alan Scott figure. I like the character. I would just like to know more about him and read his origins. I mean, I'm assuming he's just him punching gangsters and stuff. You know, but still, that's fine. Like I want to learn more about him. His sidekick, Doiby Dickles, who he wears a Doiby hat, like a derby hat, and he drives a cab and he drives Green Lantern around. And I need to know more about it. It's definitely a blind spot. I only get Alan when he like pops into house stories or current stories, or when Jade appeared, and Jade was Alan Scott's daughter. There was a series that was going to happen where they had cast an Alan Scott.
I think I remember that.
And I think it was a Lantern series that didn't happen. not this current version of Lanterns that's happening now. But I like Alan Scott. I just wish I could read more. Maybe I'll look for archive editions to see. They got to be out there, right?
Yeah. I feel like I remember seeing some when I was first getting back into comics, but that was just never a character that I was really into. So I was like, I'll read that later.
Because these are like $60. They're pretty pricey, these archive editions.
I remember seeing those at the library a lot. Come on, DC, we need some more Alan Scott.
Yeah.
Now, Ralph, you had an adventure today, and you put out a live stream on Lanterns Live, which I'm going to link in the show notes. But could you give us some tidbits? Could you give us a tasty morsel?
So there's a guy named Will Smith. He's been on my podcast a bunch. No, but I love putting Will Smith. I love people coming over to my page. He runs the Green Lanterns podcast, but he has his finger on the pulse of like Green Lantern news. And he would DM me every once in a while on Blue Sky and be like, hey, this is happening. And at one point, we just got each other's phone numbers and he texted me stuff right away. And he said, Ralph, they're shooting lanterns today at an old high school in Norwalk. And Norwalk, California is like 15 minutes from my house.
Oh, man.
So I'm like, I don't think I'm going to see anything. I doubt I'll be able to get anywhere near anything remotely resembling a Green Lantern object or prop. But I'm like, I got to go look. I just got to go look. I got to be nearby. And so I drove down to Norwalk and I was like, I should just live stream this because it's Lanterns Live. I thought about recording something and then posting it later. I'm like, I don't want to edit. I don't want to do all that. It's Lanterns Live. And so I just figured out on the fly how to stream directly to my YouTube channel and did like a 20-minute walk around the high school, around the football field, around the auditorium, and then across the street where base camp was. And they just had like dozens and dozens of big rigs with trailers everywhere. It was a full-on thing. I could see where the costuming was happening. Like I saw racks of clothes. There's a lot of green clothes, but they were like regular. It almost looked like a marching band outfit. So they were probably part of the football team. People were just driving in to park. Crew people were walking back and forth across the street from headquarters to the high school. And I was just like, maybe I'll see something. Maybe I won't. I didn't see much. I did see a prop truck. It's on the video. It's the back of a big like a trailer, and the door was wide open and there were 3 guys in there fiddling with stuff. And I just yelled in there, I'm like, hey, you got any lantern rings or power batteries? And one of the dudes like looked up to me and he had a big grin on his face. He says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, okay, this is definitely they're shooting lanterns here. They had like the yellow signs that pointed the crew to park and stuff. And it said, what is it? LAT on it. Because the code name for the lantern show is, I think, Latitude.
Oh, wow.
So if you ever hear anything in your hometown being shot called Latitude, that's actually lanterns.
Oh, man, you heard
so
it
now,
here first.
Now they're so close. I don't know how long they're shooting there, but I kind of want to go back tonight, but it's going to be really dark. But it looked like they were setting up at a football field. Like they were running wires all over this football field, and they had like those scissor lifts there all over this football field. So I'm like, and then they put a black tarp around the fence. So I'm like, well, I mean, I can look at that football field from a lot of directions. And so if they're like putting on a game, I want to see like, I guess it takes place in Nebraska, but I'm like, I want to see like a Coast City Angels team, like, because there was the baseball team in Coast City is the Angels. But it's one of those things where I'm just like, I want to see anything Green Lantern related. I want to see so bad. But I wandered around a little bit. Didn't get any answers, didn't see anything crazy. But there were ambulances and cop cars on the field. And then when I was leaving, they're bringing in these like giant propane space heaters. So they're definitely shooting tonight.
Man, when I get to that episode, I'm going to be thinking, Ralph was there. That's the first thing I'm going to be thinking of.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that show. I can't, like that set image, that still that they released.
The first image with the ring.
Yes.
Like, that's all it took. That's really all it took. And people were like kind of trying to dunk on it and just be like, this is the worst preview image I've ever seen. And I'm like, I'm looking at Hal Jordan and John Stewart in real life. I don't know what you're complaining about. Hal Jordan has a ring. And I was like, I talked about that for 20 minutes. I talked about that image for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's great.
And that just makes no sense to me. Like, that image looks great. Everything. I mean,
they look like they jumped off the page.
Yes.
And they're not even wearing Green Lantern suits.
Right. They look great. Both actors have done great things. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to this show. It's going to be fantastic.
They said early 2026, so probably in about a year.
Dang it, why isn't it 26 yet? But yeah, I'm interested to see where the Green Lanterns fit into this James Gunn DC universe. We're going to be getting the Guy Gardner in July, so we'll see how that.
I'm going to do a big old episode about that.
Man,
he's probably only in the movie for like 2 minutes, but I could
see that.
That's 2 more minutes of live action Green Lantern than I've seen in the last 14 years.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So well, I mean, there was Supergirl, and we had Jade in Supergirl, or in Stargirl. But I mean, this is different. And then John Diggle opened up the thing, and it wasn't really.
Yeah. This is. I feel like those were almost like. I don't mean to put down like CW shows, but I feel like they're for a younger audience, and I feel like these ones, like a Max show, a big budget movie, like these are for an older audience and also a wider audience. So I think these are going to be fantastic.
If this is even half of the stuff that like half of the quality that Damon Lindelof brought to Watchmen, then I'm fired up.
Yes. So man, we have some great stuff to look forward to. Like you said, Ralph, this is a great time to be a Green Lantern fan in the comics, in the movies, in the TV shows. We need a Green Lantern game. There hasn't been a good like Green Lantern video game, but
the one with Ryan Reynolds was fun. It was just really short and easy.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
enjoyed
that.
it.
I forgot about that. Yes, I did enjoy that. Yeah, but we need something, Ralph. We need a big budget game. You know what we need is like Marvel Rivals right now is having a huge impact, and people are going and reading comics because of Marvel Rivals. Like my biggest short on my channel is Geoff the Land Shark, and it's because of Marvel Rivals, like the popularity. So if we could get a DC version of Marvel Rivals, something like that, and have
something coming out. I pre-ordered some DC game that's coming out. I don't know when. I don't know what it's called. I have zero information. Again, I'm not an expert, but there was a news that Will Smith told me last week. He was like, Hal Jordan and Sinestro are confirmed to be in this game. And I'm like, okay. And I went and downloaded it, and I'm just waiting for it to pop up and them to tell me, like, you can now play this DC game. But
I think I saw something the other day about that. I need to look into that. But if they could get something, like, no matter which lantern they would put in there, I feel like if they did a Marvel Rivals style game, it would blow up, like the popularity and a new audience as well, because there's people who had never heard of a lot of these characters in Marvel Rivals that are flocking to the comic. So that's what I like. I like when something can bring people in. So hopefully this Lantern show and James Gunn.
My adventures. My adventure with Green Lantern and stuff. Like they've got an adult show and a kid's show, and the book is just like so perfect right now.
Yes.
So perfect. And now we have a Green Lantern Corps series, monthly series. You mentioned that you're going to jump on my show to cover issue 2 next month. So whenever that drops, come swing by, and we're going to chat about that, because that book's great too. That first issue was awesome.
I really liked that one. I was very excited about it. But I think our audience should be excited about Lanterns Live. Like I said, I will leave a link down below in the comments. Let us know, who is your favorite Green Lantern? Who do you like? And tell us more. We are interested. We always enjoy hearing your thoughts here on this Comic Cooks. Ralph, thank you very much for joining me, my friend. You are fantastic. And yes, definitely everyone subscribe to every single show that Ralph has ever done. Like I said, I've listed some of them. And then Lanterns Live, you will love. I guarantee you will love Lanterns Live. So definitely check that out in the description down below. But thank you very much for joining us, everyone, here on This Comic Cooks, and we will see you next time.